Hi, my name is Rashi Shaw, and I'm a second semester sophomore political science major. And today I'll be establishing the central debate and its significance. Knowledge is something we often take for granted. We assume that our perception reflects reality, that past experiences can predict future events, and that our reasoning is reliable. But how do we truly know what we claim to know? This fundamental question has been explored by philosophers for centuries, and two of the most influential thinkers in this debate are Rene Descartes and David Hume. Descartes and Hume represents two opposing traditions in epistemology. Descartes was a rationalist, believing that reason alone can lead us to certain knowledge. Hume, on the other hand, was an empiricist, arguing that all knowledge must come from experience. These contrasting perspectives raise important questions about the nature of truth, perception, and certainty, questions that remain highly relevant today. In this discussion, we will explore their key arguments, analyze their strengths and weaknesses, and examine how their ideas continue to influence contemporary thought. The goal is not just to understand their positions, but to critically evaluate which approach, rationalism or empiricism, provide a more reliable foundation for knowledge. Consider the implications of this debate in modern context. In an era of artificial intelligence, misinformation, and evolving scientific discoveries, should we rely on reason and logical deduction, as Descartes suggests, or should we prioritize impartial evidence, as Hume insists? These questions are not abstract. They shape fields such as science, law, ethics, and even technology. By the end of this discussion, we hope to provide a deeper understanding of these two philosophies and their relevance to our understanding of reality. The contrast between Descartes and Hume is not just a historical debate, it is a fundamental issue that continues to shape our intellectual landscape.
Hi everyone, my name is Audrey Nelson. I'm a junior economics major, biology minor, and let's get started with this. So knowledge is something we often take for granted. We assume that our perceptions reflect reality, that our past experiences can predict future events, and that our reasoning is reliable. But how do we truly know what we can claim, what we claim to know? This fundamental question has been explored by Descartes and David Hume. Their opposing views shape the field of epistemology, influencing how we understand certainty, perception, and the limits of human knowledge. Descartes and Hume represent two competing traditions in philosophy, rationalism and empiricism. Descartes was a rationalist, believing that knowledge comes from the reason alone and that certain truths can be known independently of experience. Hume, by contrast, was an empiricist, arguing that all knowledge must be derived from sensory experience. Their views pose fundamental questions. Can we attain absolute certainty, or is it all knowledge based on observation and probability? Is reason enough to grasp truth, or do we rely entirely on experience? These are not just theoretical questions, but ones that shape who we are and engage with and how we engage with reality. This debate is particularly important today as we navigate a world filled with vast amounts of information, technological advancements, and misinformation. Artificial intelligence, deepfakes, and virtual reality challenges our ability to distinguish between what is real and what is artificially generated. If Descartes was alive today, he might argue that we should doubt everything until we find rational foundation for truth. Hume, on the other hand, would likely demand empirical proof before believing in anything, asking what is the evidence? Consider the implication of this debate beyond technology. How do we determine what is scientifically true? Scientists conduct experiments and rely on empirical data. Hume's approach, yet these also use theoretical models and logical reasonings to understand abstract concepts, like black holes and quantum mechanics, Descartes' approach. Similarly, in fields like law, ethics, and medicine, decisions are often based on a mix of logical reasoning and practical evidence. The contrast between Descartes and Hume is not just historical debate. It is a fundamental issue that continues to shape our intellectual landscape. How we justify knowledge affects how we approach reality, and from the way we teach students in classrooms to the way we interpret data in scientific research. The methods we use to trust information, verify sources, and develop new knowledge are still deeply tied to rationalist and empiricist traditions. Knowledge are still deeply tied to the rationalist and empiricist traditions. Throughout the discussion, we will explore their key arguments, analyze their strengths and weaknesses, and examine their lasting impact. Ultimately, we must ask ourselves, which approach is more reliable? Should we prioritize logic and innate reasoning as Descartes insists, or should we only trust what we can observe as Hume demands? And is it possible that both is it possible that both perspectives play a necessary role in our pursuit of truth? By the end of the discussion, we hope to provide deeper understanding of these two philosophies and their relevance today. This is not just an academic exercise. This debate influences how we think and what we believe and how we make decisions.
Hello, my name is Malia Andrews, and I'm a junior criminology major from Camden, New Jersey, and today I'm going to talk about Hume's empiricism and critique of Descartes. David Hume approached knowledge from an entirely different perspective. As an empiricist, he argued that all knowledge comes from experience, not from innate ideas or pure reason. For Hume, if an idea can't be traced back to sensory experience, it is meaningless or speculative. Hume made a critical distinction between impressions and ideas. Impressions are direct, vivid experiences, what we see, hear, feel in a moment. Ideas are weaker copies of this impression, formed through memory and imagination. This distinction was central to his argument that knowledge is limited to what can be directly observed. A key challenge Hume posed to rationalize thought is the problem of induction, and he argued that just because something has happened repeatedly in the past does not mean it will necessarily just happen in the future, which is on pages 215 to 216. An example of this would be the fact that the sun has risen every morning does not prove that it will rise tomorrow. It is simply an assumption based on habit. This speculation has profound implications for science and everyday reason, as it challenges our ability to predict. Hume was highly critical of metaphysical speculation, including Descartes' argument for the existence of God. He rejected the idea of innate ideas and challenged the notion that we can deduct necessary truths about the world through reason alone. For Hume, if something cannot be observed or tested, it should not be treated or acknowledged. This empirical approach laid the foundation for modern scientific inquiry and the emphasis on evidence-based reasoning. While Hume's speculatism strengthened scientific methods, it also raised questions about whether we can truly know anything beyond immediate experience. If all knowledge is based on sensory input, how do we account for abstract concepts like mathematics, morality, or even causality itself? These remain open questions in philosophy today.
Hi, my name is Audrey Nelson. I'm a junior economics major, biology minor from Westwood, New Jersey, and I'm going to be wrapping up the debate as well. The debate between rationalism and empiricism remains one of the most significant discussions in philosophy. Descartes' rationalism emphasizes the role of reason in discovering knowledge, while Hume's empiricism insists that knowledge must be based on sensory experience. Both perspectives provide compelling arguments, but they also face challenges that raise critical questions about the nature of truth, certainty, and human understanding. These two contrasting approaches continue to shape the way we conduct scientific research, interpret evidence, and develop logical frameworks. Descartes' method of doubt has influenced fields such as mathematics, computer science, and theoretical physics, where logical deduction and abstract reasoning are central. His belief in innate ideas and the ability of the mind to arrive at certain truths without relying on experience is evident in disciplines that rely on axiomatic reasoning, such as geometry and logic. However, the major limitation of Descartes' philosophy is that it assumes reason alone can provide certainty, even when disconnected from empirical evidence. His reliance on God as a guarantor of truth has also been criticized as circular reasoning, and modern secular thought largely rejects this foundation. Hume, on the other end, provides a more grounded, scientifically aligned approach. His emphasis on empirical observation and skepticism of unverified claims is foundational to modern science, psychology, and probability theory. His problem of induction is particularly relevant in an age where we rely on data, statistics, and probability rather than absolute certainty. However, his extreme skepticism raises concern. If we only trust experiences, how do we justify mathematical truths, morality, or even logical reasoning itself? If scarcity is just a habit of mind rather than logical necessity, does that mean we can never be sure of anything? Both philosophers have had lasting impact in contemporary thought. In artificial intelligence, Descartes' rationalism can be seen in algorithm logic, while Hume's empiricism appears in machine learning models that rely on observed data rather than pre-programmed rules. Similarly, in law and ethics, we see tension between logical principles, rationalist approach, and evidence-based casing rulings, the empiricist approach. Even in politics and media, this debate plays out in the way people approach knowledge. Some demand absolute logical consistency, while others prioritize empirical evidence and real-world consequences. Ultimately, the best approach is to integrate both perspectives. So we need to reason to provide structure and coherence to our thoughts, but we also need experience to test and verify our ideas against reality. A purely rationalist mindset risks detachment from the real-world experience, while a purely imperialist mindset risks excessive skepticism that prevents us from forming general principles. The most effective way to gain knowledge is by balancing the two, using logical deduction and building theories, empirical observations to test and refine them. So who's right? The answer depends on how we define knowledge and certainty. Do we value the pursuit of absolute truth through logical reasoning, or do we recognize that all knowledge is provisional and shaped by experience? Perhaps the most valuable lesson from this debate is that neither approach alone is sufficient. Rationalism and empiricism are complementary rather than opposing forces in our pursuit of understanding. As we navigate an increasingly complex world filled with new technology, scientific discoveries, and ethical dilemmas, we should apply the insight of both Descartes and Hume's critical thinking Critical thinking requires us to question assumptions, evaluate evidence, and reason carefully, just as both philosophers encourage. The key takeaway is that our knowledge is the strongest when we embrace both rational thought and empirical investigation to make informed, well-reasoned decisions. Thank you. Bye.